how much are your monthly bills, and after they're all paid, how much do you have left for necessities? It's enough. Is there enough left over just to give you a little bit of breathing room?
Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Does Biden want us to answer that truthfully? Because I don't think he'd get the answer his staffers are telling him he'd get. Because the real answer he'd get is a resounding no. Daniel Horowitz, writing for The Blaze today, dove into some of the numbers we discussed on Monday with Jeffrey Tucker, president of the Brownstone Institute. Horowitz jokes in this piece that Biden or his staffers putting out posts for him on social media were proudly boasting of September's job report showing over 336,000 new jobs, saying that's Bidenomics. But actually they are right, but for a completely different reason than they think. It's not a good thing. Horowitz jokes that Bidenomics is the first system in our history that has actually made job creation an ominous economic indicator. He explains that the vast majority of these new jobs are either government work or part-time work because full-time jobs have been rapidly shrinking and are down 700,000 since June. So basically what you have is people who either can't find a full-time job that pays well enough to live off of, and so they need a second job, or they can't even find a full-time job to begin with and must look for a second or sometimes a third job. He says, quote, hence the Biden administration is celebrating a symptom of a very destructive trend in which obtaining one solid full-time job is no longer enough for a lot of people to afford living. With mortgage rates approaching 8%, car loan interest rates at their highest in 22 years, and credit card interest rates at a record high, perhaps Biden will continue to create a greater demand for more jobs within the same shrinking pie rather than growing the pie itself. It's why total revenue to the Treasury shrank by 9% in fiscal year 2023, with individual payroll taxes plummeting by 17%, despite all the quote-unquote job creation. If the job market and wages were growing the way the Biden administration boasts, we'd see record high tax revenue, end quote. Horowitz then goes on to address the elephant in the room, which is the massive government spending that is helping to fuel inflation. He argues, quote, this trend of working longer to earn less to afford fewer items is likely permanent because the inflation crisis is getting worse. Remember when we hit the $33 trillion debt milestone on September 15th? Well, we are already more than halfway to the next trillion in less than a month. The debt now stands at more than $33.5 trillion, while the entire economy is only $25.46 trillion. Just 1 month of debt will now be higher than any full year in American history until the Great Recession in 2008, end quote. Part of why 8 Republicans last week chose to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was over his inability to adequately tackle the out-of-control spending with all his side deals with Democrats in the Biden White House going back to the debt ceiling cave. Now today, House Republicans voted 113 to 99 in a secret ballot to nominate Majority Leader Steve Scalise as their candidate for taking up the Speaker's gavel should he win the full congressional vote. The outcome is a bit surprising given that Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, went into that vote with the full endorsement of President Trump. Now, whether it's Scalise or someone else, what we do know for sure is that the eventual House Speaker will have a lot on their plate, from the runaway debt and inflation problem in this current budget battle to war in the Middle East and the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. Joining us now to discuss is Peter Earle, economist for the American Institute for Economic Research. Peter, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So McCarthy bought us some time with the continuing resolution, and now we'll have a vote soon enough to see if Scalise can succeed him to the speakership and navigate this intense budget battle. How do you see all this playing out when it comes to funding the government?
Well, I mean, the continuing resolution only went on until mid-November. I don't see any sort of abatement of the political rancor happening before then. So we may have another situation where we, reach an impasse. But I wanted to point out something that you pointed out before and add a little more color to it. In 18 days, the U.S. government has added $500 billion in debt. We're halfway to the next $1 trillion mark. That's more debt, by the way, than the U.S. Basically took on from 1776 to 1975. So in 18 days, we've taken on more debt than we did in 199 years. That's incredibly hard to get one's mind around.